Hello, I'm Karen, an architect by trade, and today I'm stepping into a new role, that of a bride. As I walk down the aisle, I'm filled with anticipation. Every detail of our wedding, from the vibrant flowers to the meticulously curated playlist, reflects my careful planning. I've always imagined this day as a scene from a romance novel, a joyous celebration of our love. At the altar stands Terry, my soon-to-be husband, an engineer whose practical nature beautifully complements my artistic spirit. Together, we seem like the perfect match, each of us enhancing the other's strengths. But as I draw nearer, I catch a flicker of concern in Terry's eyes, which I chalk up to typical pre-wedding jitters. Nearby, I overhear his mother, Melissa, whispering with an unsettling intensity, her smile masking an unspoken tension. As the ceremony progresses, Terry's vows feel oddly distant, and there's a noticeable pause before he says, "I do." During the ring exchange, Melissa makes a point of snapping photos, her tone more cautious than celebratory. At the reception, she offers subtly critical compliments about my dress, praising its beauty while hinting at its unconventional style, as if to say we're celebrating love in a way that's not quite right. I try to brush off Melissa's veiled criticisms, but before the situation can escalate, Terry intervenes, asking his mother for a moment alone with me. His tone feels more resigned and supportive, adding an unexpected weight to what should be a joyful day. As I look around for reassurance, I can't shake the sense that something is off. The tension is palpable, and the warning signs are impossible to ignore. As we step onto the dance floor for our first dance, the physical space between us reflects an emotional gulf. Though we move in sync, we feel worlds apart. The song meant to symbolize our union now seems bitterly ironic. As the last notes fade, Terry's attempt at comfort only deepens the chasm between us. "So, Mrs. Karen, ready for forever?" he asks, the irony hanging heavy in the air. I want to voice my uncertainties, to question if our future will always be clouded by today's discomfort. Instead, I hide my doubts behind a tentative smile, clinging to the hope that the dark clouds will eventually clear, that this rocky beginning isn't a glimpse into our future. Little did I know, this day was just the prelude to a challenging period that would test not only the resilience of our marriage but also my own identity. As we raise our glasses in a toast to our union, the celebratory words ring hollow, overshadowed by an unsettling sense of loss. The journey back to my charming three-bedroom house, a symbol of my hard-won independence, should have marked the beginning of our shared life. Instead, it quickly turned into a battleground of conflicts that felt more like intrusions than the start of marital harmony. Melissa, living just a stone's throw away, began to drop by unannounced with alarming frequency. Her criticisms were relentless, targeting everything from my cooking to our home decor. Whether she was disparaging my culinary skills or critiquing the bathroom tiles, her remarks were consistently harsh. Terry's attempts to mediate felt weak, more performative than protective. The turning point came one afternoon when Melissa arrived with suitcases in hand, her intentions unmistakable. "I'll be staying here now," she declared, breezing past me to claim my favorite cozy corner by the window, my sanctuary for quiet reflection. "This spot will suit me just fine," she announced, leaving no room for debate. Watching her settle in, my heart sank. I caught Terry's eye, silently pleading for him to defend the sanctity of our home. In a moment that called for unity, I pulled him aside, my voice trembling with emotion. "This is our home, Terry. Shouldn't we have talked about this together?" His expression was distant, lacking the warmth that once comforted me. "Mom's getting older, Karen. It's not fair for her to be alone. She needs to be with family," he explained, emphasizing family in a way that made me feel more like an outsider than a partner. "So we're not family, is that it?" The words tumbled out, heavy with hurt, as tears threatened to spill. Terry responded quickly, impatience creeping into his tone. "You know that's not what I mean, Karen, but I owe it to her." "What about what we owe each other? Aren't we supposed to be building our life together, not reshaping it to accommodate your mom as a permanent third wheel?" I argued, feeling as though my words were merely bouncing off him. My concerns and feelings seemed to vanish into thin air, and just like that, the decision was made. Melissa's presence in our home was a done deal. My objections were overridden, and with her in the house, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. Every space that once held our shared dreams now felt heavy with tension and disagreement. My cherished reading nook was overtaken by her belongings, while the kitchen transformed into a battleground marked by her relentless critiques. The man I married, Terry, now seemed more aligned with Melissa than with me. It dawned on me that this battle wasn't just about my marriage or my personal space. It was about my identity, my dignity, and my peace. How did we get here? How have my desires, my space, and my voice become secondary to Melissa's preferences? The transformation was stark. My beloved Nuke became a symbol of her encroachment, the kitchen a venue for her endless criticism, and my husband felt like a stranger, siding with what seemed to be an adversary. This was only the beginning. A life already filled with challenges spiraled into a relentless nightmare. The oppressive atmosphere in our home mirrored the diminishing of my own voice and space. Amidst this mounting tension, a discovery brought everything into sharp focus. The unmistakable sight of 2 lines on a pregnancy test. It signaled the start of a new life, yet in the chaos, the news should have been a joyous revelation. Instead, the heavy air around me felt suffocating. As I held the test, my hands trembled with a mix of excitement and dread. This milestone, which I had always envisioned as one of the happiest moments of my life, now felt like an overwhelming burden. Alone in the bathroom, tears welled up as I confronted my reflection. The reality hit hard. The stakes were now much higher. When I finally shared the news with Terry, his reaction was underwhelming. "Well, that's something," he muttered, quickly shifting the conversation to some renovation idea his mother had proposed. Melissa didn't see my pregnancy as exciting news. She viewed it as her new project. She took it upon herself to manage every aspect, from my diet to the birthing plan, all under the guise of being helpful. Her interference soon became oppressive. She scrutinized every bite I took, casting judgmental glances at even the simplest meals and questioning my weight management. Despite my assurances that everything was doctor-approved, she would scoff, convinced her old-school methods were superior to modern medical advice. As my pregnancy advanced, Melissa's control over my life grew even more intrusive. She expected me to maintain our home to her strict standards, regardless of my physical state. "Karen, why isn't the living room clean yet?" she demanded, comfortably ensconced in my reading nook, now her base for endless phone scrolling and TV watching. My pleas for rest were dismissed. She saw my pregnancy as no excuse for laziness. Terry's silence during these interactions only deepened the tension, his lack of support becoming painfully evident. It all came to a head during a dinner that escalated into a heated argument over baby names. When Melissa sharply criticized the name I had chosen, it was the final straw. "Enough, Melissa. This is my child, and I will decide how to name them," I asserted, my patience finally snapping. Her response was one of sheer indignation, as if my desire to control my own life was a direct affront to her. Terry's feeble attempts at mediation often sided with his mother, dismissing me as overly emotional. This only widened the rift between us, underscoring the stark reality. I was not only fighting for my voice and space in my own home, but now, more critically, for the right to shape my future and that of my child. Amid all the chaos, the revelation that I was pregnant deepened the already suffocating atmosphere of our household. As I held the pregnancy test, my hands trembled with a mix of anticipation and dread. I had always imagined that discovering I was pregnant would be one of the most joyful moments of my life, filled with excitement and celebration. Instead, as I stood alone in the bathroom, tears welling in my eyes, this milestone felt like an overwhelming burden. When I finally shared the news with Terry, his reaction was disappointingly subdued. "Well, that's something," he muttered, quickly shifting the subject to a renovation idea his mother had proposed. It was clear that Melissa viewed my pregnancy not just as news but as her new project. She took it upon herself to oversee every aspect, from my diet to the birthing plan, all under the guise of being helpful. Melissa's interference soon morphed into outright control. She monitored every bite I took, casting judgmental glances at even the simplest meals and questioning my weight management. Despite my assurances that my diet was doctor-approved, she would scoff, convinced that her outdated knowledge was superior to modern medical advice. As my pregnancy progressed, Melissa's demands grew increasingly unreasonable. She expected me to maintain the house to her exacting standards, regardless of my condition. "Karen, why isn't the living room clean yet?" she would demand from her new command post in my once peaceful reading nook, which she had turned into her base for endless phone scrolling and TV watching. My pleas for rest were dismissed. She regarded pregnancy as no excuse for laziness. Terry's silence during these interactions only intensified the tension, his lack of support glaringly obvious. This became painfully clear during a dinner that spiraled into an argument over baby names. When Melissa harshly critiqued the name I had chosen, it was the final straw. "Enough, Melissa. This is my child, and I will decide how to name them," I declared, my patience completely eroded. Her reaction was one of sheer indignation, as if my desire to make decisions about my own life was a direct affront to her. Terry's feeble attempts at mediation often sided with his mother, dismissing me as overly emotional and deepening the rift between us. I felt more isolated than ever, trapped in a home that had transformed into a battleground where my voice felt increasingly insignificant. It was no longer just about selecting a baby name. It was about reclaiming my autonomy, my dignity, and the sense of belonging that had been steadily undermined by Melissa's domineering presence. As I stared at the reflection of my once gleaming wedding ring, I realized just how far I had drifted from the woman I used to be. I barely recognized the woman staring back at me, a woman who was slowly losing everything she held dear, her sanctuary, her self-respect, and most painfully, her resolve to stand up for herself. During one of our tense confrontations, Melissa, filled with a vindictive sense of triumph, delivered a blow that shifted everything. She insinuated that perhaps I didn't belong in their family if I couldn't handle a simple disagreement. The most excruciating part was Terry's silence. His lack of response felt deafening, reinforcing the harsh reality that this struggle had been my life for far too long. Days blurred together as I moved through a house that felt increasingly foreign, clinging to the only glimmer of hope I had left, the life growing inside me. Yet even this small comfort felt under siege in the toxic atmosphere that surrounded us. The tipping point came on a cold evening during yet another fraught family dinner. Despite my best efforts to prepare a flawless meal, Melissa's criticisms were relentless, attacking everything from the seasoning to the execution. Each harsh word struck like a physical blow, slowly eroding my already fragile confidence. But it was her next taunt, questioning my capability as a mother based on my supposed failure to manage household chores, that cut the deepest. Terry's quiet acceptance of her words became the final straw. Fueled by a potent mix of pent-up resentment and sheer desperation, I found my voice. "Step it up. I've been carrying our child, managing our home, and enduring endless criticism from your mother. And you're telling me to step it up?" The shock on their faces was palpable, but I was past caring. For too long, I had allowed myself to be diminished and demeaned. In that moment, I reclaimed my voice. "I'm done. I can't do this anymore." The clarity of my decision sliced through years of suppressed feelings like a beacon of light. It was a declaration of my refusal to endure any further disrespect or emotional torment. I was ready to fight for myself, for my child, and for a future free from the shadows that had darkened my life. My voice trembled with emotion, yet I remained resolute. I refuse to raise my child in an environment where their mother is constantly undermined. If this is your idea of family, count me out. My words rang with finality as I rose from the dinner table, leaving their stunned silence behind. Gathering only the essentials, I made my way to the door, my hands trembling as I reached for the handle, eager to escape the oppressive atmosphere. Melissa, ever the provocateur, seized the moment to deliver her most cutting remark yet. "And where do you think you're going? This is Terry's house, not yours." Pausing, I turned to face her, my resolve strengthening. "This house is mine. I bought it. I decide who stays and who goes." Terry's voice broke through, laced with desperation. "Karen, please, let's talk about this." But I was beyond negotiation. "There's nothing left to discuss," I replied, my tears reflecting the agony of my decision. Stepping out into the cold night felt like the start of a new chapter, one filled with uncertainty but also tinged with a profound sense of liberation. The closing door behind me marked the end of a tumultuous saga, a final farewell to a life I could no longer endure. With each step, a mix of pain and determination coursed through me, fueled by an urgent need to reclaim my autonomy. The journey to my parents' home was a blur of cold exhaustion and heart-ache. Just moments from the sanctuary of my childhood, I stumbled and fell to the ground. The physical pain was a mere echo of my inner turmoil. Yet rather than deterring me, this fall only strengthened my resolve. Arriving at my parents' doorstep, the concern on their faces mirrored the gravity of my situation. As they rushed me to the hospital, I realized that this moment of vulnerability marked not just an end, but also a new beginning. Lying in the hospital bed, coming to terms with my reality, I understood that returning to my former life was no longer an option. This breaking point was a crucial step toward reclaiming the life and dignity that had been stripped away from me, a painful yet necessary transition toward healing and independence. The clarity that comes with pivotal moments was profound, illuminating the path forward from the shadows of my troubled past to a future I would shape myself. Amidst a whirlwind of emotions, I stood surrounded by the comforting yet anxious presence of my parents. Their silent worries spoke volumes about their fears regarding the true state of my marriage, now starkly revealed in its troubled depths. Breaking the heavy silence, my mother voiced her concern, her words heavy with the weight of unfolding reality. "Karen, dear, what's your plan now?" "Unsure yet resolute," I replied. "I'm not sure, Mom, but one thing's for sure. I can't go back to that life. Not now, not ever." My declaration rang with newfound determination. My father, who had been pacing anxiously, paused to offer reassurance. He emphasized their unwavering support, regardless of my decision, and urged me to consider not just my future, but also the child growing inside me. His words prompted a silent acknowledgement from me. My mind had been a battleground of uncertain scenarios, each fraught with the possibility of a fresh start. Then, the unexpected buzz of my phone shattered my resolve. A message from Terry, a plea for communication. To me, his timing felt like a door long closed. His words hung unanswered in the void as I powered off my phone, symbolically ending our dialogue. My next steps became clear, marked by action rather than words. Consulting a family lawyer was my first decisive act toward untangling the turmoil of my marriage. With my parents' unwavering support, we navigated the cold, legal breakdown of our union, discussing divorce, custody arrangements, and financial support. Despite the sterile nature of these discussions, they empowered me, marking the initial steps towards seizing control of my destiny and securing the well-being of my unborn child. Within a week, Terry and Melissa received the formal notices, divorce papers for Terry and an eviction notice for Melissa from the home that was legally mine. Alongside these notices were demands for substantial child support and compensation for the emotional turmoil I had endured. Though drastic, these actions were imperative, severing the ties that had long bound me to a life of despair. When I finally re-engaged with my phone, it was inundated with Terry's attempts to reconnect. His messages were a mix of regret and pleas for reconciliation, but the wounds from nights of humiliation, years of neglect, and Melissa's calculated malice, silently endorsed by Terry, ran too deep. The fleeting temptation to entertain his overtures was quickly overshadowed by the memory of my enduring pain. This moment wasn't just about closing a chapter, it was about reclaiming my narrative where the shadows of the past no longer dictated the brightness of my future. The love I once had for Terry was now eclipsed by the grief of our crumbling marriage. Taking decisive action, I cleared away every trace of him from my life. I deleted his messages, erased his contact details, and blocked him on all social media. To me, Terry had become a chapter of my past, a distressing period I was more than ready to leave behind. I knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges. Navigating a divorce with a child on the way was no simple journey, but I was determined to forge my path, stepping away from the suffocating shadows that had once engulfed me toward a future brimming with hope. On the day of the court proceedings, the room was filled with a sterile chill typical of spaces where fates are decided. Seated beside me, my lawyer radiated confidence, while my parents offered silent yet steadfast support from behind. Across the aisle, Terry appeared lost, slowly coming to terms with the reality before him, while Melissa's expression shifted between shock and defiance. As the session commenced and the judge entered, prompting everyone to rise, a whirlwind of legal motions and arguments unfolded. For the first time, it seemed as though Terry and Melissa were truly grasping the repercussions of their actions, not just in legal terms but through my eyes as well. When Melissa was called to testify, her usual bravado faded. She attempted to frame her intrusions as concern for her son's well-being, but her arguments fell flat under the judge's skeptical scrutiny. In a clear and firm verdict, I was granted a full divorce and sole custody of our unborn child. Terry was ordered to provide child support, and Melissa faced a substantial fine for emotional abuse and harassment, leaving her visibly shaken. As the judge's gavel fell, I felt a wave of liberation mixed with a tinge of melancholy. My marriage had not ended with loud confrontations but rather with the quiet shuffling of papers and the steady voice of justice. This chapter of my life was now firmly closed, paving the way for a fresh start free from the burdens of the past. The cost of my newfound freedom was something I could never have anticipated on the day I exchanged vows. Exiting the courtroom, Terry approached me with bewilderment, voicing his remorse and disbelief at how our lives had unraveled. Yet, as I looked into his eyes, I no longer saw my future but rather a profound void where love had once lived. I never envisioned this as our ending, Terry, but apologies can't undo what's been done, I stated firmly, turning away to leave the past behind. Melissa sought my gaze, perhaps hoping for forgiveness or acknowledgement, but I couldn't afford that closure. She had taken too much from me, and I refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing any further impact on my spirit. Stepping into the embrace of the outside world felt like being welcomed with open arms. The sun shone brighter and the colors appeared more vibrant, as if I were seeing through a new lens, one not clouded by the shadows of past turmoil. My mother's embrace and her words of pride brought tears to my eyes. "You're truly free now, Karen," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I couldn't have faced this without you and Dad," I replied, my heart swelling with gratitude for their steadfast support. That evening, in the tranquility of what was now solely my home, I discovered a profound peace, alone yet far from lonely. For the first time in what felt like forever, I was free to live on my terms. The path ahead as a single mother seemed daunting, yet as I felt my unborn child's gentle movements, a wave of confidence washed over me. We would navigate this journey together. I was certain of it. The trials I had endured had brought me to this juncture of self-discovery. Though they left scars, these scars told a story of resilience, not surrender. Gazing toward the horizon, I felt propelled not merely by circumstances but by choice. This realization imbued me with a profound sense of empowerment, ready to embrace the future. I was motivated not by obligation but by deliberate determination, recognizing this moment as the dawn of a significant new chapter in my life. I was poised to take on whatever lay ahead with a renewed spirit and unwavering resolve.